Hey, what's up? It's Dominic D'Angelo and Razor of StudioOneSports.com. I'm here with Mr. Robert Karplos. It's a Friday. TGIF, everybody. Robert, how are you, man? We got some news to cover, my friend.
We've got some news to cover. Happy to be here. Happy to see you and your cat.
Sweet cat.
We'll say hi to the folks who are joining us here live. Cammy Star says after morning, lots of rumors about Road Dogg hitting the road. Abysmal sound on TNA. SmackDown preview, and will we find time for Billy and the CW? Dom, I think Cammy stole your job.
She might have. She gave me the whole lineup right
She really did. And then Warner Breeze says, hello, aren't I? Another year older. Maybe next year I finally grow out of this 39-year wrestling phase.
Ooh,
Happy
boy.
birthday. Good news for you. It ain't going to happen. Your exit window was somewhere in the 11 to 12 range. That's the window. If you don't jump off that moving train at that point, you're stuck here for the rest of your life. So welcome to purgatory. And Wrestling Old Head says, good after morning, all. Partially awaiting a tell-all podcast where Dom sits down with the D-O-double-G.
Interesting.
This is one of those instances where we're deferring to you, man. This is your world. Real quick, we'll say hi to Kevin Kellum.
Yeah.
Says hello from Minneapolis. Dude bounces all over the place. What a journeyman of the AWA territory is one Mr. Kevin Kellum. But yesterday, I went to go record. Apologize, wasn't here yesterday for our daily show. I got pulled into a meeting, was unable to extricate myself from the proceedings. No, not extradite. That's a different term entirely, but nice try. And then recorded with Scott Chaplin later on in the day for Working Stiff. And as we started to record, found out about Road Dogg departing. And his first thought was, I bet you Dom has some thoughts on it. So, Dom, the floor, metaphorically, all yours.
I sure do have some thoughts on it. So, yeah, I mean, Road Dogg, he signed on, I believe it was February 2025. He went back with the company and, obviously he worked with SmackDown. And I think, his exit is indicative of the status of what we've been talking about with WWE. Did I say that? I said that
indicative.
Wrong,
it's fine. We're in a Pygmalion situation here, and I'm all for it.
Okay. Well, anyways, I think it's indicative of what WWE has been doing and their lack thereof, because what you get from Road Dogg is a lot of what's been entertaining about SmackDown in certain ways. You think about Kit Wilson coming out and him getting that big pop. Guys like Trick Williams would really embrace what Road Dogg's philosophy on how creative is handled. And another one that comes to mind too is any of that entertainment kind of aspect that people really enjoy. I think if Danhausen had like the opportunity to kind of work with Road Dogg, it would be even more elevated to what it is. So people that are critical or that are embracing this change that, Road Dogg, thank God he's gone, is I think a huge misnomer, and just what they judge about Road Dogg from what they see, from outside appearances. And I really don't think that's the right mentality to have, because you take somebody like Road Dogg away from the WWE creative product right now, it could lead more to what we're currently getting as this haphazard thing going down. Now, as far as what has happened behind the scenes, I have no idea. I'm on the same level of everybody else because, I don't do that kind of stuff. I don't dig in and then ask about it. If Road Dogg wants to share, he'll share it with me. But as far as anything else goes, I don't have any inside information. But knowing Road Dogg and how he feels creatively and seeing him work behind the scenes in a backstage wrestling scene, he can command a room. He can get stuff done, and he does get stuff done. So I don't think this is not a tell on to Road Dogg of how creative is handled, but I don't know. I don't know how the exit even went, if it was on his volition or WWE's volition.
Look, I think the headline over the last several weeks has been the panic button has been pushed repeatedly. The decisions that WWE has been making of late are of a haphazard nature, and none of those decisions has made the product better, which is the biggest concern that I have. You are now a little over a month away from WrestleMania. and a seismic shift in the creative, well, two seismic shifts in the creative team. The fact that Road Dogg is no longer with the WWE and SmackDown. We've been very complimentary of SmackDown as, in my opinion, being the best wrestling show that's been on TV of
Yeah.
late. The Even the expansion of 3 hours has actually been somewhat welcome, which is quite surprising. Raw has been utterly abysmal, and it looks like the woman who has been primarily responsible for what has been probably some of the worst episodes of Raw that I've seen in 6, 7 years has been named head of Raw. So clearly, whatever the product is right now is catering to someone, and it sure as hell ain't me, and it sure as hell ain't you.
Mm-mm.
And I challenge anyone to point to the decisions that have been made of late on WWE programming and say, this is a fantastic product. This is the best it's been. And I went through this exercise yesterday, and the last even the last 3 WrestleMania main events had a well-earned story to get to where they were at. It was Cody trying to finish the story with all the machinations of the bloodline and failing. Great build, great match, intriguing finish.
Mhm.
Then a year later, Cody finally finishing his story, great. And then last year, this John Cena heel turn going up against Cody, where we thought there was going to be an epic story with The Rock. Since that Mania, it's been a lot of falling action. Nothing has really truly ignited. They tried with the Seth Rollins stuff, but they outsmarted themselves a couple different times with the fake injuries and trying to cater to the WWE Unreal TV program. And the title change that we've seen on SmackDown for the men's title, the person they've decided to go with the SmackDown women's title, the Raw women's title match, the Raw men's world title match, a lot of just baffling, lackluster decisions across the board. So the fact that Road Dogg is leaving, I do not think is suddenly going to spark a creative renaissance in the company. It kind of feels like he was, in a lot of ways, a voice of reason that they just did not want.
Absolutely. And I think too, Triple H is in charge. You don't the when you remove wrestling minds from the wrestling business, I think you create some more problems that doesn't adhere to what the core storytelling and an understanding of how wrestling should be portrayed on television. And Road Dogg had that unique ability to grew up in the territory days with Bullet Bob Armstrong and his family and stuff like that. But then he was right in the thick of the Attitude Era and understands like what really can captivate an audience and get an audience going. And so he's got that balance of that old school mentality along with the entertainment aspect, primarily with the entertainment aspect. And when you remove somebody like that, I think you're going to create some more problems for yourself with if you're WWE and what your grand scheme of things going. Like a foundation, you're removing a piece of foundation, I think, in that regard.
Look, I've never worked with Road Dogg, so I can't speak to his creative genius or his creative pitfalls. For all we
Mhm.
know, he was pitching the worst ideas possible, and everybody else was covering it. I've seen it in writers' rooms before. There are some people over the tenure of wrestling whom I've sat in rooms with who have gotten unearned credit and came up with truly terrible ideas. And then there's other people who were unsung heroes in those rooms and didn't get those opportunities. So I have no clue what was going on, but this much volatility, regardless of who it is, this close out to Mania validates everything we've been feeling and talking about on this show for the last few months.
Mhm. Absolutely.
None of these are positive signs, and all the leaked information that's been coming out about the ESPN relationship, some folks in ESPN feeling that the DNA mix of these two companies doesn't work. It's a very rocky time, and these feel like self-inflicted wounds by the WWE.
And you talked about it too with Scott on the latest Working Stiff is like, and you mentioned it on here, is the damage that Unreal has done to the program that you think.
It's a swing and a miss that doesn't help anything. I think if Netflix wanted a documentary show or they wanted a behind the scenes show, there's talent you could pick. If anything, no one thought a WWE Unreal show we were going to get a fully unvarnished anything.
Right.
I think not quite tough enough, but some iteration of what goes on at the Performance Center would be interesting, kind of like Hard Knocks. There's an area in the PC world where Performance Center world, sorry, not the PC politically correct world, where you can tell that Hard Knocks story in a very compelling manner, and you can be a little bit more transparent with it, with kids that are just getting signed to NIL deals or kids that are coming from college, beginning that training process, honing those skills. They've tried to do work shoot versions of it. There was Tough Enough. There was that show where like Undertaker was coaching some of these kids that was
LFT.
on LFT. It was on A&E, and then that seems to have gone by the wayside. But
I actually think that's coming back. I think they announced that.
It may come. It doesn't. It hasn't had any movement.
Yeah.
I think that a genuine Netflix related show where you can follow these people in their lives and see how they're honing and developing their skills, that's particularly interesting. The writer's room, and I talked about this a little bit with Scott, it is not an environment for cameras. You need to be unvarnished. You need to feel free to be able to say whatever it is that you want to say. And you're going to say things that are hurtful, things that are insensitive, things that are not politically correct. But if they don't get said, you wind up with a terrible product. So being able to say, this guy showed up and he's out of shape. This person's look is not marketable for what it is that we need them to be. We need to enhance this particular demographic and market. Who are the wrestlers that speak to that demographic and market? How do we push them? You don't want to be the man or woman being filmed saying that, because it may not be received properly, but those are legit conversations that wind up happening in any creative environment. We were told, sorry.
Oh, no, but what I was going to add too is you have worked in the pro sports world with hockey and boxing and everything like that. And so there's an understanding too of how coaches speak and how they have to be blunt, because talent is what matters. When it boils down to it, whether you're on the rink or on the football field or in a wrestling ring, if what you convey and do on there, you have to have an understanding of that. And you have to be blunt when it comes to creative or actually on field or on ice talent in a lot of ways. And I don't think, and if you don't, you're not going to get the right kind of product, whether that be sports, pro wrestling, you name it.
Yeah, I think that there's an element to, I've been in meetings with when I was in hockey with the GMs and the coaches and working on draft conversations and player conversations. They are decidedly un-PC. They are decidedly blunt and rude. And the kind of comments that if they were to get out, if someone outside of that room were to hear it, you may be ruining a player's career.
For sure.
Same thing's going to happen in a writer's room. You may take, let's just pick a random guy, LA Knight. Don't know why that popped into my head. If Hunter was able, without cameras, to say how he genuinely feels about LA Knight, and I, rumor and innuendo may have heard a thing or two previously in life of him not being the biggest LA Knight fan. If he feels that there's cameras on me and I can't be brutally honest and blunt about what it is that I need to say, it leads to a muddled, mixed message. Mm-hmm. If there's no cameras and just says, this guy doesn't have it, I don't want him on TV, you've now damaged LA Knight's ability to get a job someplace else. You've now ruined the possibility of AEW or TNA or New Japan or somebody else taking a chance on him, because Paul Levesque may have articulated a significant flaw in this guy's presentation. Whereas this fluffy version of WWE Unreal, Michael Hayes made a comment about Chelsea Green that blew up. And part of what he said wasn't wrong in that essentially what he was trying to say is Chelsea Green doesn't need to be your main event talent. She can contribute in so many different ways. And to have stars like that you can put it at a mid card level, you put it at an upper mid card level, you can put it at a lower card level, and they will consistently deliver. It's a great utility player. You can't do the same for Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
And the one time they tried to do that of late with Roman Reigns, he bitched and moaned and complained and basically wound up in the main event of WrestleMania. It was, you're going to go work Bronson Reed. You're going to put Bronson Reed over, and it's going to help us build Bronson Reed. And it led to him complaining on podcasts and politicking and ultimately winding up in the main event of WrestleMania against Punk, which kind of feels to the detriment of the overall product.
Yes, I mean, like it is. It's. I mean, to pull back the curtain and what W has done with Unreal and everything. And I've never watched an episode of Unreal. All I've seen are clips and everything. But it's not for me. I don't like that kind of stuff. And to get that kind of, to your point, when you do something like Tough Enough, where it's at the core ground level and you're seeing people go to the rise and you can tell fun stories in that manner. But if you're really going behind the scenes and you're getting a half pregnant kind of presentation of what everything is about, not great. I don't like it. And
I also don't know if we need it, because what I would be hard pressed to find is whether or not WWE Unreal converted non-fans into fans. That was one of the things when the original Tough Enough took off on MTV. Are people going to watch this show and they're going to turn around and start watching WWE programming? The only thing that seems to have genuinely brought in outside interest to WWE was Total Divas.
Yeah.
It was a smart idea. You went after a completely different audience who might not ever have watched WWE programming. But if they're watching on E and they're watching a number of other reality shows, maybe this catches their attention and they go ahead and they watch it. People scrolling on Netflix, there's a trillion things to watch on Netflix. Unreal was on maybe for 2 weeks in the top 10 and then vanished. And unless your algorithm is really narrowly specific, you're not watching it. And chances are, if you're watching Unreal, you're already a WWE fan. Behind the scenes stuff is not as compelling as they think it is, unless it's an unvarnished look, which this obviously isn't. We talked about the Raven documentary a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest takeaway is Raven looks like a piece of garbage in a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
And he allowed that because he's like, you can't tell the story without talking about the way that he behaved when he was a young man, and that he was, let's just say, out there in terms of his behavior. And his friends were like, you're very much a take it or leave it kind of guy, and you either like him or you hate him. When he was the Raven character and he was heavily steeped in drug abuse, he was not a pleasant person to be around. And you got a lot of people on there that were basically saying, this is not a great guy to be around, including his own partner.
Yeah.
You don't get that necessarily on WWE Unreal. And the Road Dogg firing, if it's part of season 3 of WWE Unreal, like, what are we doing? Yeah. Focus on a great television show and not the great behind the scenes of the television show.
Robert, something too, I think is, the aspect of Unreal. What makes wrestling intriguing to fans is the air of mystery. So, like, with a lot of that talent, you look back in the day, you didn't have this kind of access to people and what they were doing behind the scenes. Like, so you kind of lose a little bit of the cool factor because it humanizes the people, which can be a positive thing in certain ways if handled right. But this is not doing it. You're just, you're doing a narrative here of something that's supposed to be real, but really isn't.
Here's the thing. The behind the scenes of WWE or wrestling is as intriguing, or in some ways more intriguing, than what the product actually is.
For sure.
Someone who was at Warner Breeze, it was his birthday, and was like, 39 years, am I going to finally kick it? What helped keep me engaged in wrestling and that transition from watching the product to being more invested in the product was that behind the scenes stuff. It started to come out and become more accessible as the internet was available, and all of a sudden you could go on to AOL and get newsletters emailed to you and hear behind the scenes stories, and it gave you a different level. When it's the company manufacturing that behind the scenes stuff, it's not as good. I remember being there in, I think it was '06,
Hmm.
that WWE.com had a dirt sheet section where they were posting real news stories. Nobody wants that from WWE. It's like, you are the behemoth. You are the news generating entity. You shouldn't also be posting the rumor and innuendo from that. Conrad's podcast with Bruce Pritchard was so interesting because it was Bruce thinking he was done forever from the wrestling industry, spilling the secrets of decades of working with Pat and working with Vince, and knowing who the hell cares. And not to speak out of turn, as we are here part of the podcast Heat family, since Bruce has returned to WWE, people have pointed out it's not quite the same show because you're not really going to bite the hand that feeds you. Jim Ross doesn't have that concern.
No.
I think sometimes he forgets his show is recorded. So when he forgets the names of AEW talent or badmouths AEW product, oh, it's just Jim being Jim.
Yeah, Robert, it's what a I. There's a lot to kind of dive into this, I think, still too. Wrestling Old Head asks a good question here. Is this what happens when a wrestling company is bought out? The fundamentals, principles, and keys to success is sacrificed for more income and a higher sales tag. Robert, what do you think of those kind of comments?
So I think that, yes, they're trying to figure out a way to maximize revenue and come up with as many different shows and product ideas as possible. And somebody probably said, boy, you know, it would make a great show is the behind the scenes of what it takes to make this product, not really thinking what that actually involves and entails. And it's one of these things of it's being a little bit pregnant because a lot of the show is personal interest stories. So it's, you know, I'm Seth Rollins, but I'm actually Kobe Lopez, and here are the things that I used to do, and here's how I'm going to lay out my storyline. And I I don't know. And I used to love any glimpse of something behind the scenes. Like there was something so taboo and exciting about it. Now it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're grateful and thankful for the folks who join us on this show. There are shows that are done by current wrestlers. There are shows that are done by past wrestlers. They speak openly about the business. The guy who really put this all to the forefront was Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
The art of wrestling with Colt Cabana was a fantastic opportunity to peel back the curtain and let people really talk about who they were. The thing that always stuck with me was years and years ago, the episode with Tommaso Ciampa, where Ciampa went in depth on some of his mental health struggles, and you suddenly saw who this person was. It was really impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you
Now,
get that all the time.
now you get it all the time. People are far more accessible. The Undertaker has a podcast. That's really all you need to know about 2026. That the Undertaker not only has a podcast, but has a Zoom account and is getting on there with like Axe and Smash and being like, hey guys, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame.
That's it.
Thanks,
Well,
Dead
Robert,
Man.
to make another comparison too to what Wrestling Old Head was saying, I alluded to what happened with Whole Foods. You know, my shoot job is at Whole Foods, and they got bought out by Amazon. Before they got bought out by Amazon, Whole Foods was the local Pittsburgh one, very communal, very team oriented, very everything that came into play with that. And when they got bought out by Amazon, pay went up, which was great. But ultimately, to Wrestling Old Head's point, all those principles, everything that kind of went to the wayside for more of this big, huge vision of making that ultimate dollar.
Yeah,
And
but you know what? It's like I remember even when I was at the company, they would always talk about, oh, the way it used to be before we went public. It was still, and now people look back at it like, well, if only Vince was still here. Like,
if only
no
Vince was
one's ever satisfied with the way things are at their time. I think WWE has always been financially motivated,
for sure.
but right now they're starting to feel the after effect of WrestleMania has become too big to fail, and they're really second guessing third guessing, fourth guessing a lot of their decisions, which ironically enough brings us, with the 5 minutes we have left, to the crossing of the river Styx. I mean, tonight is make or break for WrestleMania.
Yes, it really is, Robert. We got Cody Rhodes taking on Drew McIntyre for that WWE Championship. From reports and everything, it seems like Cody Rhodes will be regaining that championship. Is there anything else? How do you get out of this? What would you do if you were in that creative position?
Honestly, Drew retains in some form or fashion there, where Cody gets a shot anyway. They wind up in a triple threat.
That's your best correct damage control.
Here's the problem. You are. I'm gonna actually count this out loud in the air, which is fascinating. So after this week, there's 1, 2, 3. Why is it not letting me move? 4, 5, 6 episodes of SmackDown.
Okay.
That gives you 6 chances to tell a compelling Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton story from scratch, where both of them right now are baby faces.
Yep.
That is a very heavy lift. It feels like a lot. Whereas if you get to Randy versus Cody versus Drew, you can still tell the legacy story, the Viper hearing voices story, Cody trying to remain QB1 at any cost, Drew outsmarting everybody but having the world coming after him. If Cody wins, it's like, all right, what do we do with Drew? And everyone's going to know it's a consolation prize. The biggest issue is none of this was the long-term plan. I can take the ride if the train tracks were going in this direction. But it's like those old Looney Tunes cartoons where they're literally putting the tracks down as the train is moving.
Yeah.
I don't feel as compelled to take that journey. And if I want slapdash week in, week out booking, there was a whole era that was dedicated to that. And the Attitude Era, we looked through it from rose-colored glasses because you watched the 2-minute video packages. A lot of it was rough, guys. A lot of it was Kane's going to win the title, and then the next night, Steve Austin's going to win it back because we just need to pop a rating at the moment. Doesn't matter if it makes sense narratively. Right. It's what I want from my wrestling product, but I think as we started this show, not everybody wants the same thing. You know what we want?
What do we want, Robert?
We want to thank everyone for joining us, as they do every Monday through Friday at noon Eastern on a plethora of platforms, including the WWE Creative _ISHX account, the @Dominic D'Angelo X account, the @SE Scoops X account, and on the YouTubes on Podcast Heat and Studio One Sports. What a light, cheerful Friday. This was my little half-hour break in between all my actual important meetings, and I'm like, oh, this will be fun. We'll just talk some wrestling. And instead, it was like existentialism. So, on behalf of my Waiting for Godot partner, Dominic D'Angelo, I'm Robert Karpelis. Best of luck in your future endeavors.
Shout out to Road Dogg and his baby goats.
Shh.